Okay, great. So everybody's here with us. Thank you everybody for joining and logging on and taking the time to really join us today. It's really great to see all of you here. Anyone who hasn't met me yet via our previous webinars, my name is Liel and I'm a customer success manager here at Comeet. And today we're meeting for our third webinar in our webinar series regarding reporting. Today our focus is going to be about source effectiveness. We're going to touch on a little bit about best practices in terms of managing your sources in Comeet, and of course the relevant reports that help us track different sources and their performance. So before we get started, I just want to mention that this webinar is being recorded and we're going to share the recording with all of you and anyone else who's registered and didn't get a chance to join. And of course, you can share that recording with your teammates. So great, let's get started. So for today's agenda, the first thing that we're going to cover is why tracking sources is so important. Why is this information valuable to us and where can we use it regarding the hiring process and the recruitment process. We'll talk about our best practices, about managing sources. We'll probably touch on a few topics that you're familiar with. So we're just going to do it pretty briefly just to make sure that we cover all of the bases and make sure that we're all aligned. And then we're going to dive into the reports. Our top 3 reports today are the sources overview, sources quality, and the referral report. And then we're going to take some time to talk about the UTM report and our diversity report. I do want to mention that the UTM report, which is touching on marketing campaigns, it's relevant only for our ultimate users, but it's just a nice report that can be really helpful if you're doing any kind of marketing campaigns with your marketing team and your recruitment team. So we'll talk about that as well. And we're going to talk about our diversity report, which is a new report that we've released recently that touches on the EEO questionnaire that you're using for your hiring processes in the US. Okay, great. So managing sources, why is it so important? This is a part where I turn off the camera and I'll meet you again for the Q&A. So tracking candidate sources is really important because we can get all sorts of different kind of information and insights. The first and most basic thing is to really see the cost of our hires. If we're working with different recruitment agencies, then obviously that's impacting our cost per hire. If we're running a referral program with different bonuses, that's also going to impact our budget. And so that's something pretty basic and important that we would want to understand by tracking our candidate sources. In addition, we'd like to take a look at time to hire. So obviously your time to hire is impacting, your overall work plan in terms of also reporting to management and meeting deadlines. So time to hire can vary between different sources, and that's another something that we would want to compare. We definitely want to know more about the quality of our sources. Obviously, if we're receiving a lot of candidates from a specific source that either are duplicates and already exist in our system, or maybe they're just not passing that first CV screen. So maybe that's not a good source to work with. We want to make sure that we're receiving unique and relevant candidates. And of course, in general, understanding more information about our candidate sources can give us more input in terms of different strategic objectives that we have, whether we decide to invest in employee engagement and the referral program, maybe you want to, emphasize and invest time in our employer branding, on job boards, on Glassdoor, for example. So as you can see, sources are super important and, there are different aspects that we would want to take into account. Before we really go into the actual reports, I really want to talk to you about best practices. I'll also show this inside the Comeet system, but just to give you a general overview. So the first thing that we want to make sure that we have is that all of our sources have been added to Comeet, right? So even if you're using an external job board or a headhunter, we want to make sure that they're all added to Comeet in the correct way. We also have the option in Comeet to review all of our existing sources and cover and make sure that there's no duplications, that we can remove sources that aren't relevant anymore, especially for someone who's been using, any of you that have been using the system for a few years now, you're going to have a lot of sources in the system that you might want to clean up. Next, we're going to touch a little bit about trackable links. This is our best practice for posting on different social forums and different external job boards. Another part of sources is automating your referral program. For any one of you who has a referral program, it's important that you keep in mind that this can be automated via Comeet, whether you're using our hosted career site or your customized career site. And this can save a lot of work and make sure that all of the employees are engaged and, giving giving their input, sending in their friends, and receiving bonuses for successful hires. The communication with sources is also an aspect of managing sources, because it's not enough to just have them in the system. We want to be able to communicate with them from Comeet, whether it's to send them an email about a specific position or a specific candidate. And once this is done from within Comeet, that means that everything is being documented, and that's really important for us. Last but not least, it's important to solve duplicates carefully and on time, because this is also impacting sources. When I'm solving a duplication in the system, I'll not only choose which process this candidate is going to continue or which process I'm going to stop, I also have the option to attribute different sources to different processes. And if we don't do this on time or don't do this very carefully, we could be creating some kind of mix-up when it comes to sources. And that's another thing that, we want to make sure that is correct, especially if we're talking about sources that have additional costs, such as agencies or referral from our employees. So let's go into Comeet so we can see some examples of what we talked about. So the first thing that I mentioned is adding your sources correctly. I'm sure all of you are aware of this, but I'm just going to cover it real quick. We'll go to the blue plus sign and we'll click source. This is where we'll need to give our source a name. It could be an agency. And in that case, we would also need to choose from the drop down the agency type. It could be maybe a campus board, and then we would go over here and choose campus. And it can be additional social platforms, for example, Facebook groups for junior marketing, right? There's all sorts of different options that we could do here. Once we give the source a name, we'll choose the relevant type. And a quick reminder is that if we're using this for an agency, we'll need to make sure that there is one contact and the correct domain for the agency. This is how the communication with agencies will be streamlined and automatic. Now, once we've added all of our sources to Comeet, we might want to go over to the sources overview report inside of Comeet so we can see all of our sources in one place. We'll click on the company name at the top right-hand corner and select reports. So next report that we're going to go to is the sources overview report. And I'm just going to go ahead and choose all times here at the top. So for anyone who's using the system for quite a while, you want to make sure that you choose a relevant time frame, maybe not take a look only at the sources that have been active in the past month. And this is a demo account, so obviously there's much more data if we're looking at a longer period of time. Once I choose all times, I can scroll down and see all of my active sources. So they will be organized by type. Active search to be all of your different sourcing sources. We also have the agencies. Here you'll see all of your different recruitment agencies that you're using. We'll also be able to see a list of all of the job boards that we're using, as well as the different referrals that we already have in the system. So other than just seeing that everything is in the system correctly, I just want to show you that if you identify a duplication, you can go to the right-hand gray arrow, click merge, and then just choose the relevant agency or other contact that you want to merge this into. You can also click edit source over here if you want to change any of the details. If an agency has rebranded, they have a new name, for example, a new domain, a new contact. And of course, if for some reason you're not using this source anymore and you don't have candidates that are attributed to it, you can go ahead and delete a source from the system. But we definitely want you to refrain from deleting sources that have sent you candidates before, since that will obviously impact reporting. The next thing that I want to show you is how to use a trackable link. Okay, so we're going to go back to our main screen over here. And let's say I want to post the accounting associate position on Facebook. So instead of just copying the URL from your career webpage, which is probably what many of you are doing right now, I'm going to show you now how you can create a trackable link that will be for this position, accounting associate, and for Facebook. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the sources tab. And when I scroll down under expand your recruitment, I'll have the other sources section. And this is where I can choose the relevant source that I want to add, right? So I can choose different Facebook groups or just a general Facebook. This is a good opportunity to mention that just like you add Facebook as a source, if you're posting on different Facebook pages, you can really track the performance of each one of your posts by just creating multiple sources. So Facebook group for marketers, Facebook group for for career seekers, any kind of different group that you're using today. Now you can identify which post is performing better and compare them. So for this example, I've already added Facebook, right? So I'm just going to choose a name here and click add. And here, if I want to post this specific position on Facebook, all I need to do is go to the right-hand side, click on the gray arrow and choose Get Trackable Link. And you can see that once I've chosen it, it will automatically copy it to my clipboard. And all I need to go now is to Facebook and do what I've always done before, write a specific post, add an image, whatever you're doing right now, and click paste for that specific link. So this is what we call using trackable links. And this is really our best practice in terms of posting jobs on external job boards or on social media. I also want to mention that if you want to post a trackable link for an entire source and for the entire career page, not only for a specific position, you can go ahead at the end of the social over here, you can click edit source, and in the source card, you'll have trackable link for careers website. And again, all you need to do is just go ahead and click copy. You can also use our basic search, okay, to look for Facebook over here. Click on the source card and copy the trackable link. So that's how we work with trackable links. If you're posting on external job boards and different Facebook groups, it's definitely a best practice. It will give you more insight whether your posts are bringing in relevant candidates and contributing to your hiring process. The next thing I want to touch on regarding best practices is our referral program. So if you're an owner admin in the system, you can go into the system settings, and under referral program, you'll have the option to set up what kind of bonus you will be giving your employees for a successful hire. You have the option to have a general text message or actually put a specific amount. And in addition, if you want, you can also enable our referral status updates for employees. And this will send them a weekly email with all of the new open positions and just a general status of what's happening with all of the candidates that they've referred. So this is a nice tool to automate it. And I'm going to show you how it would look on your career website. We're going to look at a demo website right now. This is from my demo account. And as you can see, I have various positions. Once I go into a specific position and I would like to share it on social media as an employee, all I need to do is log in one time with my email and my name, and then I will have here get your shareable link, which is essentially a trackable link, but for company employees so that they can get credit for their referrals. You would be able to copy this link and send it to your friend, via text message, and they would apply via that specific link, or you could share this link on various social media platforms like LinkedIn or Facebook. And this is a really good tool to get your employees engaged, sharing positions, expanding your reach, and reaching top talent through their personal connections. Next, I want to talk about communicating with agencies. So if I'm looking to notify a specific agency that I've opened a position, I'm going to go ahead and also go to the sources tab. So here under sources, right, I have all of the agencies that I've added to this position. These are the agencies that I would like to work with. And then I have the envelope icon on the right-hand side. Here I'll be able to click and then choose request candidates. And this will essentially pull an automated email template that I can send to my contacts at the agency, letting them know more details about the position and giving them the exact position email address that they should send candidates to, which will automatically update them in my Comeet system. So that's how I would let them know that a position is opened. And another option is for you to use the top envelope at the top where it says agencies. And when you click here, request candidates, you'll see that it's putting all of your agencies in BCC. So this can just, save you a few emails, save you a few clicks, and get everybody on board. Another recommendation is that when you're choosing the envelope icon and selecting request candidates, you can CC or BCC yourself. And this is just a good way to keep track of these outgoing emails to agencies to make sure that they've been sent and to track, when you've contacted them and when you've received candidates from them. Last, before we talk about duplicates, is communicating with agencies regarding candidates that are already in the system. So here we can see an example of a candidate, and the source is ABC Jobs. It's an agency. Once the source is an agency, you'll see that the source becomes a dropdown, and then you can directly email the source from this dropdown, or request candidates' contact information. So once you click on this, again, it's using an auto template that you can reach out to your contact and say, hey, this is, a really interesting candidate. I would love to receive their phone and email so I can contact them and start the process. So that's in terms of communicating with agencies. The last thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to do this briefly because, duplicates and multiple positions is a whole topic by itself. I do want to mention the importance of when you're solving duplicates to take into account the sources. So in this example, I can see that Don Meckler is in 2 processes. He's already in a process for QA manager, and he's been in that process for a while now. And recently he applied for the front end team leader. And this time he came in through an agency. So I have the decision on a company level if to allow candidates to be in multiple processes. And then in that case, I could give him the opportunity to be in 2 processes and say continue and continue. Or I can decide that each candidate can have 1 process at a time. So I could choose that we're continuing with the advanced process and stopping the other process. In any case, no matter what decision I made, I still have the bottom part where I need to select a source and to attribute it to the relevant process. So for example, if I'm deciding that I'm continuing with Don in 2 different processes, I will be able to either choose 1 source for both processes or attribute 1 source per process. So if I'm solving duplicates and I'm doing it on time and I'm doing it accurately, this is obviously going to impact the reporting that I have for sources because I'm going to look at the hires and the candidates that I received from each one of the sources. Okay, good. I hope that makes sense. These are really best practices that I'm sure all of you are familiar with, and you can learn more about them in our help center if needed. So before we dive into the reports, I just want to, think together with you guys about the different questions that we're looking to answer and what reports we can look in order to get this relevant information. Now, the first thing that we would want to know, I think for all of us on a really basic intuitive level, is which sources yield unique and relevant candidates, right? Like we talked at the beginning, we want to make sure that we're receiving unique applications and that we're receiving candidates that are relevant. As a reminder, and we'll touch on this as well, relevant candidates are candidates that are qualified, meaning they have passed the first screening step in the workflow. We'll touch on that a little bit later, but that was just a small reminder. So beyond receiving unique and relevant candidates, we're also interested in to see if there are specific sources that maybe have a different effectiveness. Maybe specific positions work better with specific sources and job boards. Maybe if we look on a location level at all of our positions, we can identify that there are specific sources that are performing better in a specific location that are, more culturally adapt or more relevant for the local candidate pool. So that's something interesting that we want to consider. We'll also see what the trend is of adding candidates. So if we've had like a large campaign on social media, or maybe we've launched our referral program, we'd probably want to see these results in the data. If you're using a referral program, we'll talk about the report that gives you more information. And as I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about our marketing campaigns report that is relevant for hiring teams that are working together with their marketing campaigns together. We're going to touch on that as well. So let's get started and go into our reports. I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to go into Comeet Insights. As a reminder, in order to go into Comeet Insights, you're going to choose the name of your company in Comeet, top right-hand corner, and choose Comeet Insights. You'll see that it opens up a new window, which is where we are now. This is our Comeet Insights reports. You can see here all of the different reports that we have available today in Comeet. They're organized by folder, which is by topic, and you'll have the relevant reports according to your package with us. Here we're seeing an example of all of the different reports. On the right-hand side, we will have all of our filters. So depending on the different kind of report, the filters might change a bit, but on a basic level, we can filter all of our reports by recruiter, location, department, position, and hiring manager. These reports are updated once in 24 hours. We can see the last update at the top over here in gray. And I'm just going to remind all of you that by clicking on the envelope icon, you can automate different reports to be sent to your email according to your preference. So this is just another really useful tool. So let's talk about our first report. This is the sources quality report, and this is the most basic and most, I guess, enhanced report that we have regarding sources in Comeet. This will allow us to see how many applications we've received from the different sources, how many of them were unique, and how many of them were relevant. So let's go through the data. In this demo account, I'm looking at all of the applications that came in from 2021. I can see that I had a little over 12,000 applications, almost 3,000 were duplicates. So I have, a number of unique candidates that is close to 10K. Below, I'm going to see the distribution and the trend over time of the candidates added. And here we're looking at source type. So we're grouping all of the job boards in one category. We're grouping all of the agency and paid recruitment services into one category. And I also want to point out over here that you can see here NA. So NA means that we have candidates that don't have sources attributed to them in the system. And that's a really important indication that we should go back into Comeet, identify who these candidates are. You can do this using our advanced search, and we want to make sure that every candidate has an updated source. So this is just another tip in regards to reports and best practices. In our example today, we can see that 50% of the candidates added in the past year, in the past 6 months actually, are coming in from social. Okay, so we can see that social is having a large impact in terms of recruitment and applications. And on the right-hand side, you can see the trend over time. So for example, we can see in April 2021, we had a increase in the applicants that were coming in through social networks. Maybe this is an indication of a specific campaign that we were running. We can also see over time that in the past couple of months, there's been a decrease in the number of candidates coming through agencies. Maybe we've made a decision to work with less agencies, or maybe our agencies aren't sending us enough candidates. So these are the kind of questions you want to ask when you're diving into the data. Now, when we scroll down to the next part of the report, we're going to see 3 tables. They're all built the same. Okay, they're going to show you number of applications received, how many duplicates were removed, giving you an overall percentage of the duplicates. We'll have the number of unique candidates, the number of candidates that completed their first screening. So this is another opportunity to remind you that the first screening is the first step in the workflow that is defined as a go, no-go step. So that's why our recommendation is to make sure that all of your workflows start out with a CV screen that is set up as go, no-go. We'll also see how many candidates actually passed the first screening, meaning they were marked go, they were marked relevant, and we wanted to start the process with them. And that will give us the percent of qualified candidates, right? So out of all of the unique candidates that completed their first screening, how many of them actually passed it? So these are the numbers that we're going to be looking at. We want to look at the duplicates column, and we want to look at the qualified column. Those are the 2 columns that can give us an indication regarding source effectiveness, how many unique candidates we're receiving and how many relevant candidates. We also have the column of hired, right? So if we can identify that most of our hires are coming from relevant source, that is also an important indication. The first table is pretty high level. Okay, it's looking at source performance by source type, those types that we saw in the pie chart before, which is the agency, the job boards, all of our referrals grouped together. Social network is one category. When we scroll down, we'll be able to see it by source name. And then when we go to the bottom of the report, we're drilling down to a position level. So we'll see which sources work for different positions. So let's start at the top and see some examples. So in this example, I can see how many candidates overall I've received from agencies. I can see how many duplicates were removed, which means that 22% of them were duplicates. That's not a very high number when we're talking about agencies. Of course, this differs between, locations, positions, and agencies. We can also see that 600 of them passed their first screening, giving us a 58% of qualified candidates. That's a really nice number to see from agencies. That means that 60% of them were relevant. And we can also see that we've made 5 hires in the past 6 months from all of our agencies, which is also an important indication. For example, if we're looking at job boards, we'll see that there is a higher number of duplicates. This is very common for job boards. It's not something that's very special or outstanding. a lot of people will apply for various positions on job boards and maybe also send their CV through an agency or an employee because they really want to work at your company. So we will see a high percentage of duplicates in many cases. And here we can also see that the qualified candidates is a little lower than before. It's about 40%. That also makes sense. Job boards, bring in a lot of different applications that probably won't be relevant in that sense. But we can see that we are making hires through job boards, so it's good that we're posting on them. Our referral program is going really well. We've had a lot of hires, and we can also see that 60% of them are qualified. So this is just some of the examples that we can understand from this report. We want to make sure that we don't have too many duplicates and that we have a high number of qualified candidates. When we drill down in the next table, we can see the source performance by source name. So now it's not only enough to know that, my agencies were performing really well. Now I can identify which agency was outperforming the rest, or maybe I have an agency with a large number of duplicates. So here, for example, I can see this agency, they're not sending me a lot of candidates and 34% of them are duplicates. So that's, a third of the candidates removed. We can see that in terms of qualified, it's not a very high number. So we can decide if we want to keep working with them. On the other hand, we can identify agencies that are sending us a large number. And even though they have, a high number of duplicates, we do have a lot of qualified candidates coming from them. Obviously important to take into account that those agencies that are sending over candidates that we're ultimately hiring is also another indication. So here, since you're probably working with various sources and various job boards, you can just click here and go through the different pages of this table. Last at the bottom, as I mentioned before, this is a very granular and very specific take on sources and their performance, because we're looking at a position level, looking at the type and the source name. So here you would really need to dive into the data, take some time and identify, for example, if for a specific position, there are specific sources that are working better versus other positions. Maybe there's a different agency that should be working on each position. So that pretty much sums up the sources quality report. As you can see, it takes some time to dive into the data, and we definitely encourage you to do so. You can also use the filters on the right-hand side. The next report that I want to talk about is the referrals report. So for anyone who's running a referral program via Comeet and automating it, this is a really useful report. Also to see how the referral program is going, if you're getting relevant applications and if you're making hires, and it can also help you track the actual bonuses that you need to give your employees. So at the top, we have the hires through referrals. Overall, in 2021, we've made 52 hires via our employee referrals, which is almost 50% of all of our hires this year. And that's a really large number and a good indication that this referral program is working well. We'll see the distribution between uncompensated and compensated. So, uncompensated referrals can be for management or for someone from the recruiting team that's not going to get a bonus for it, but it's still a referral. And we can see here the trend chart on the right, which is comparing all of the different hires from other sources, the gray line, to the compensated and uncompensated hires. So here, for example, we can see that, in March, there were a lot of hires from other sources, but as time went on, our employee referral program kicked in and we had more and more hires coming from there. So that's nice to see. The next part will show you the overall applications that you've received through referrals, again, breaking it down to uncompensated and compensated. It makes sense that more referrals are coming in from compensated employees, and we can see that trend accordingly. In the next part of the report, you're going to see more additional data regarding the referral hires by department and by location. So if we know that almost 50% of our hires are coming in through referrals, maybe we want to identify where we can enhance that and push that forward. So here in the department graph over here, we can see that in our product department, for example, we don't have any hires coming in through referrals. So maybe we need to talk to the department, see if there's a specific bonus that we should change or enable. Maybe we need to have a specific campaign there, maybe understand why we're not hiring via referrals. We can see that other departments, for example, management, marketing, operations, we're seeing, a nice number of referrals. Next, we'll see the referral hires by location. So obviously this is important to understand when you're recruiting globally. Maybe there's a specific culture in San Francisco versus a specific culture in Mexico City that's impacting your referral program. Maybe you need to adapt it by location and communicate with your local teams. And at the bottom over here, we have our referral leaderboard. It's basically a list on the left-hand side of all of the different employees that sent over candidates that were hired. You can filter it by uncompensated and compensated. And on the right-hand side, you're just going to have a list of all of the different employees that sent over candidates and really see who's, your top employee referral, who's, got that motivation to bring in their friends. This is maybe someone you want to reach out to and communicate with accordingly. Maybe you want to consider giving different bonuses, not only by hires, but also by the number of referrals made. And at the bottom, we'll see the referral rewards. We'll be able to see a breakdown of all the positions and what the current reward for this position is with the number of referrals made and the number of referrals out of the position applicants, so the percent of position applicants in terms of the referrals. Here we can see, for example, that we have two positions that have a $3,000 referral versus more of our positions that have a $1,500 referral, and we have some positions that don't have a referral. Maybe those are positions that we don't really need employee support or help recruiting. Last but not least, we have the full list of hires made through referrals. This is a really good report to use with your finance department if you're giving out bonuses for successful hires, because first of all, this table can be downloaded to CSV or Excel and just shared with a relevant team. And we also have an additional column here. So the table is including the name of the source, the location, department, and position name, and of course the name of the hired candidate. In addition to that, we have the day since start date. So if you're, giving a bonus to your employees only after their referral has been employed for over 90 days, for example, this is a nice way to keep track of that as well. So that pretty much sums it up for the referral report. Again, this is a really useful report. It can give you an indication of how your referral program is performing, and according to how you've decided to manage this on a company level, you can see the impact of your different efforts internally. So now we're going to move on to two more reports that we're going to touch on briefly. The first report is the marketing campaigns report, and this report is only relevant for our ultimate clients that are using targeting campaigns that use UTM parameters by your marketing team. Okay, so UTM parameters, just for anyone who hasn't worked with this before, these are specific parameters that marketers use to track the effectiveness of online marketing campaigns. So ads on channels such as Facebook or LinkedIn are mapped with these UTM parameters. And so this is another layer of tracking sources that you can use. So if you have a marketing team that's on board and doing different targeted campaigns, using the different UTM parameters, we've built a new report for you called the marketing campaigns that will allow you to get more information about the performance of your campaigns. Now, it's important to mention that the different ad platforms such as Facebook, Google Analytics have a lot of additional data regarding these campaigns. That's their goal. They have the number of clicks. They can identify cross-device attribution, for example, and different things that we don't include in Comeet, because in Comeet, our focus at the end of the day is if candidates were unique and relevant, just like we said at the beginning. So using this report, this can be an additional layer that you use together with your marketing team and your recruitment team to understand the performance of your reports and where you should be targeting your candidates. I'm going to mention here that we have the different UTM parameters here. We have the UTM source, medium, campaign, term, and content. And this is a report that's not going to replace tracking sources in Comeet. It's an additional layer. Here by different parameter, you'll be able to see the different name. You'll be able to see how many applications came through this specific campaign, how many duplicates were removed, the number of duplicates, the number of unique candidates, how many completed their first screening, and how many passed their first screening, okay, giving us the qualified percent. As you can see here, I have the option to close my filters on the right-hand side and give me a better view here. So now I can see the qualified, and of course, I will see here the hires. So you can see that this report is very similar to the sources quality report that we started out with. And that's because it can give us add-on information to the information that's coming from your different ad networks. So an ad network can identify that someone clicked on a post on Facebook but applied by Google. That's great information and it's really important for your marketing team. Here in Comeet, we want to give you added value and help you understand where the unique and relevant candidates are coming from beyond, the different clicks and the different data that you have in the different marketing platforms. Another added value of this report is the ability to calculate cost per qualified candidate. I'm going to take you back for a second to our presentation and just show you how this would work. Very briefly, we have all of this information in our help center and our support team will be happy to answer any questions. But the idea here is that using the ad network data, you can identify the cost per application. And if you divide that by 1 minus the percent of duplicates and divide that by the percent of qualified candidates, you're essentially going to reach the cost per qualified candidate. And that's another indication whether it's the cost per hire, the cost, the different costs that you're investing in your different recruitment efforts together with the marketing team. So that's just another piece of data that can be really relevant. Last but not least, I want to point out that in all of the reports and the different tables here, if you see no UTM source, that's basically meaning all of the other candidates that came and applied to your company, regardless of the campaign, right? So they applied organically. So that's for the marketing campaigns. Again, this is a report that's opening for our ultimate customers. If you think this could be relevant for you, you can reach out to our support team to get more details. Okay, so we're going to dive into the diversity report. It's our last report for today. And the emphasis that I want to put on this report today specifically is where diversity meets sources, okay? Because I'm sure all of you who've been using the EEO questionnaire have had a chance to look at this report. And if not, this is a really good opportunity. Taking you back into Comeet just real quick, if you are a system admin or owner, under the settings, under careers website, if you scroll down, you have the option to add the equal employment opportunity questionnaire for all of your positions, right? This is relevant for recruitment in the US, giving your candidates the optional questionnaire to answer regarding the EEO. Once this is activated, you'll be able to use our diversity report to learn a little bit more about the results. Now, diversity is really important for all of us, and you're probably wondering how diverse your talent pool is, what is the impact of your diversity efforts, and maybe want to understand more about how diverse candidates will perform across the different workflows. And where we're going to focus on today is which sources are driving unique and relevant candidates across each diversity group. So there's 4 diversity groups that were included in this report. We're including gender, ethnicity, veteran status, and disability. At the top part of the report, you'll see how many questionnaires were presented, how many responses, giving you a response rate. The response rate of 86%, I think, is very nice, especially because this is an optional questionnaire. And when we're scrolling down, each section will look really similar. I'm going to cover the example of gender for today's webinar. So first thing to keep in mind is that EEO information will not appear in the candidate profile. This is in order to prevent bias in the hiring process. And this report will only be open for your system owner, okay? Because the goal here is to give you more information to better understand how diversified your candidate pool is and how the performance compares between the different groups. So another reminder that this is not about company employees, it's only about applicants. And this is sensitive information that we want to make sure is anonymized and is used to give you an overall indication of diversity in your hiring process so you can, reach your goals and improve accordingly. This is also a good opportunity to mention that we recently added an integration with a job board called Notify, which is a job board focused on underrepresented groups. So let's dive into our example, and we're going to have Q&A real soon. So here in the gender section, I can see that from out of all of my responses, 43.7% identified as female. I can see the distribution overall from my entire candidate pool for the time selected at the top right-hand corner, and I can see the trend over time. And in this example, it's pretty clear to see that over time, I'm receiving more and more applications from candidates that are identifying as female. So this could be a good indication that I'm reaching more diverse groups. I'm reaching a goal of more female applicants. So this is an indication maybe of some kind of effort or campaign that was done actively. Next, I'll have the pipeline. Here, I'll be able to compare their performance of the different groups, in this case, female, male, and candidates that preferred not to identify by gender. We'll be able to see how many of them were added to the system and how many completed and passed their first screening, ultimately resulting in hires. So here I can see that even though over time I have received more applications from female candidates, I'm still hiring more men than women. This data can be used to further impact your diversity hiring and make decisions accordingly. What I want to show you today is the gender by source. You'll find this also under ethnicity. And these are two dropdowns that are giving us an indication of the different sources when it comes to diversity hiring. So in the gender by source section over here, what we can see, just a sec, let's have it open up. What we can see here in the gender by source section is we're going to be able to see how many candidates from different groups applied via different sources. So for example, if we can identify that there's a specific source that is used more commonly by male candidates or by female candidates, that can also help us direct our maybe marketing or recruitment campaigns accordingly. So in this example, we can see that 60% of female candidates that applied came in through Indeed versus an 84% of men, meaning most of the men, most of the candidates that identified as male came in through Indeed. What we can also notice here that's really interesting is that 20% of the candidates that identified as female came in through Facebook. And for candidates identifying as male, we don't have any of these. So this is an interesting piece of information. Maybe we can decide to target more female candidates on Facebook. Maybe we can decide to change our ads or job posts on Indeed, for example. So this is just an example of the kind of information that can be used from our diversity report in the context of sources. Okay. Great. So I think that's enough for today. I'm sure you have a lot of information right now in your head and you're thinking, what can I do and when can I see these reports? So all of these reports exist in your Comeet Insights, except for the marketing campaigns, which is for ultimate customers only. Before we dive into some Q&A, I would love if you guys could really just take 1 minute and, give your feedback in our poll. We're really looking to improve and hear your feedback. We're planning additional webinars for this year. So anything that you have to add here is really important for us and we're learning a lot from you. So I'm gonna give you another minute to vote and then we can move to some Q&A. Okay, great. Thank you all so much for your input. Awesome. So let's talk about some questions. I can see that some of you have written questions in the Q&A. This is a good time if any one of you have additional questions, you can write them in the chat or the Q&A as well. Great. So let's answer some of your questions. So I see a question here about fixing candidate sources if they have the NA, meaning they don't have a source attributed. That's a great question. Let's jump into Comeet for a sec, and I'll show you how to do this. So just as a start, you can use the advanced search, scroll down and choose source type and unknown source. Once I click search, I'll be able to identify all of the candidates that don't have a source updated in the system. If I want to fix that, all I need to do is select the candidate. I can go through their candidate card, look at all of their history with us. I'll probably be able to identify where they came from. And then instead of unknown source, I'm going to go ahead and click edit and choose a specific source. And you can really see here how valuable and important this is, because this is an example of candidate that I've actually hired. I really want to know where they came from. So we don't want to wait until someone is hired to identify that they don't have a source. We want to do this ongoing. So this is a search that you can do once a week, once a month, and fix them accordingly. Okay, another question that we have here is where we can find a list of all of our sources. That's a good question. We talked about it before. I'm going to just give you a quick reminder. We'll go to the top right-hand corner of Comeet, click your company name and choose reports. Under the Comeet reports, which are our internal reports, you can find the sources overview report. As a reminder, you should filter by large time frame, whether it's the past year since you've been using Comeet or all times, and then you'll have an indication of all of the different sources, everything in one place. You can edit them, you can go through them, you can export this list. It's really super useful. Okay, good. So we have time for one last question. Someone is asking here why we're measuring only the first screening. So why is a candidate marked relevant only after the first CV screen? So that's a really good question. I want to remind all of you that recruiting is really, really dynamic, and a lot of different parameters impact the hiring process. It can be in comparison to other candidates. It can be according to different deadlines. It can be according to budget. There are a lot of different things that will impact if a candidate is moving through the workflow and is being hired. And so that's why the first thing that we're going to measure if this position was posted and is bringing, relevant candidates. So that's why our recommendation is to make sure that the first step of all of your workflows is the CV screen, whether it's a recruiter or a manager, and that is set up as a go, no-go step. So even if you're doing sourcing, okay, and you want to add, for example, a sourcing step called, let's say, reach out, make sure that it's an admin step, okay? So once you've reached out to a candidate on LinkedIn or on any other platform, you can mark this as completed, but only once you actually start the process and they become relevant to move forward with, you would go to the CV screen step and mark go, no go. So that's really, really important because that's the relevancy of the candidates, and that's where we put the emphasis on measuring effectiveness of sources. Okay, great. Thank you so much for your questions. For all of you who haven't had your answers yet, our support team is available to answer any additional questions. And I'm just going to go ahead and sum up our webinar. This is the last time we're going to meet for a couple of weeks. We're going to give you some summer vacation, and we're going to meet again in the fall for additional webinars regarding reporting. So any questions that you have, any topics that you're interested in learning more about, feel free to pass on this feedback to our support team so we can learn and adapt accordingly. Summarizing our talk today, we talked about the importance of aligning best practices when it comes to tracking sources and the importance of actually doing everything on time correctly in the system. While we do this, if we're doing this correctly, we'll be able to have valuable information regarding the cost per hire and the effectiveness of your various sources. And of course, moving forward, it's never too late to organize your sources, make sure you're solving duplications and using all of our different automation tools. So that's really it for today. It's really great to see all of you again. Thank you so much for making the time to join. We appreciate any feedback you have, and our support team will be available for anything else from our end. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.